welcome friends to part two of our workshop. I'm really excited to see y'all back. We're going to be talking about working with possibly difficult supervisors or mentor teachers. I know that can be a area that we're a little nervous about. What happens if I don't get along with my co-op, or what if there is a disagreement? We're also going to be talking about how to ace that supervisor observation, because that can also cause a little nervousness. We're going to talk about three different ed tech tools, maybe some that you're familiar with, maybe some that are new. And then we're going to end out with how to balance having a life outside of student teaching. Honestly, and in my opinion, I think balance is a unicorn. It does not exist. Some days there's not perfect balance. I mean, like some days you're going to be more invested into student teaching. Other days you're going to have more time for friends and self-care. So just making sure that we're not just focused in on our student teaching careers. Yes, we need to be invested while we're there and in our classes, but also being aware that we are people outside of the classroom. So just keeping that in mind. All right, so we did our poll. Excuse me, we did our poll and a few housekeeping things. If you haven't joined us last week, we're happy to have you here this week. If you were here last week, then this should look very familiar. A few housekeeping things. If you would like to have your camera on, you're more than welcome to. If not, that's fine too. Please keep your mic off and you can pop the questions in our chat as we go. I know Raven and Christopher are rock stars and they're going to keep that chat going. So if you have any questions, we can answer them there. And we are recording. Thank you, Michelle, for the reminder about the recording. A little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich. Currently, I'm an instructor at Slippery Rock University. In the fall, I will be an associate professor in the SEAL department at Slippery Rock University. I'm an author of EduMagic, a guide for pre-service teachers, and host of the EduMagic podcast, which is a podcast just for future teachers. It's a really fun project. It's a labor of love, and I absolutely love sharing out some strategies and techniques for future and student teachers in that podcast. I would love to continue our conversation after tonight's session over on Instagram. You can find me at sfessich and we can chat there. All right. So we have some things. Here's our little agenda. I kind of went over that already. We'll be talking about how to work with dealing with difficult cooperating teachers, mentor teachers, maybe your supervisor, classroom management strategies. And honestly, classroom management strategies, there's the biggest thing there is to be consistent. So we'll talk more about that. Preparing for your supervisor observation so you can, hit the ground running with that and be as prepared as possible. How to balance personal and professional life. And then we'll talk about using ed tech. We're just going to talk about 3 tools without getting overwhelmed. So in our chat, go ahead and open that up. And I want you to pick one question to reply to. And I'll make sure before you start answering them, I'll flip back to the agenda so you can see in case you want to work on question 2. So you can either answer question 1, share one takeaway from our first workshop, which was last week, or you can answer question 2, what are you interested in learning more about today? So which topic are you really excited about? I'm going to go ahead and flip that over so you have our topics. So either answer question 1, which is a takeaway from last week, or question 2, what are you excited about tonight? And I'm going to go ahead and pop that in our chat just in case you need that as well. So question 1, takeaway from last week, or question 2, what are you looking forward to learning about this week? And you can just pick one or two. Question 1 or 2, I should say. Pick one question. I like to learn about classroom management, balancing professional life, preparing for, well, we're all over the board. Observations, life outside of school. Yep. Ed tech, that's a great one. Classroom management, supervisors, a bad situation. Classroom management. Oh, look, classroom management. I think most of us are working on that. I think it's between classroom management and balancing personal life. Okay, good to know. This is great because this not only gives me selfishly some opportunities to think about, oh, what are some episodes I can do about some of these topics, but it also gives us a good focus for our time tonight. So thank you so much for sharing in the chat. And as we go through tonight, again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please drop them in our chat. We have lovely volunteers who are, in tonight that they can help out as well. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so our first topic is dealing with either a difficult situation, maybe one of your concerns when you're working with cooperating teachers is maybe it's something like it starts off really great, we have a wonderful relationship, and then there's something that happens, maybe you disagree with, or there a difficulty occurs. Maybe it's a miscommunication. Or maybe you're in a classroom, this has happened before, where the student teacher's ready to implement some new techniques, methods, strategies, and the co-op's like, I love worksheets. We're doing all the worksheets. Or maybe you're in a situation where your styles are not meshing well between your co-op and yourself. So no matter where you might be in those different scenarios, I mean, they could all occur, or it could, or not, and that could happen too. But please know first, you're going to learn something from this experience. Is keep kind of the mindset of this is a learning opportunity. So let me share a quick story. Whenever I was a student teacher, you heard from last week, I had two placements. One was special ed in a learning support classroom. I believe it was like fourth and fifth grade reading. And then the other one was fifth grade general education. And the students like switched for one of their classes. So I had a main group and then like a group that switched. And in my fifth grade placement, I was so lucky. We were doing one of my favorite books, The Wizard of Oz. I love The Wizard of Oz. And it was in their reader, and we were reading the book, and they had vocabulary and comprehension questions and things like that. And I had a co-op who was very much, I love worksheets. We're going to do worksheets. And I thought, I really want to try something. So talked with my supervisor, and she said, yeah, you can try some stations. So I brought it up to my co-op. I said, you know what? We've been learning about doing different stations or spots that students can move around the classroom and do different activities related to the story. Do you think I might be able to try that? She said, oh yeah, that sounds fun. We'll try that out. So I had one station where it was cross-curricular. So I had students counting out money to buy green candy from Emerald City, because if you know, Emerald City is all things green. We had another station where they're doing a traditional worksheet with comprehension questions and looking for text evidence in those comprehension questions. We had a vocabulary game where they were matching vocabulary and definitions. And then another one where they were following the yellow brick road in another station to answer comprehension questions. So it was a really fun activity, and it was a fun class experience. And I remember I was in charge of two stations and my co-op was in charge of two stations. So we're kind of just keeping track, making sure everybody's where they needed to go, rotating and all that. Well, at the end of the day, it was a long day. At the end of the day, I heard my co-op tell her principal that she had planned all these workshops for her stations for her students. And I was devastated as a student teacher. I was like, oh, but I did that. And so she took credit for it. And I was devastated. I remember losing confidence in myself and in my planning, but it was a learning experience. And I hope that doesn't happen to you. And I remember, coming back to the classroom the next day, just thinking I was just defeated. And she was just talking about how great the workshops went or the little stations went for her students. And I remember, okay, it's about the student. It's not about me. It's about the student. So keeping that in mind as well as you're navigating maybe difficult conversations or misunderstandings, remember the focus is the student. And sometimes it's not about you. So I hope that is a learning opportunity. Remember that your college supervisor is there to support you and your teacher. So if there's anything that's occurring, please, keep your supervisor in the loop so they're able to help support you. When you're working with your cooperating teacher, asking them questions and clarifying questions. If you feel like there's like a tension in the room, maybe if you feel brave having a conversation like, I feel like there might be some tension here. How can we work to resolve that so it doesn't fester and continue on? That's always a possibility too. And remember, going in with that mindset of it's a learning opportunity, you're going to learn what to do in the classroom. You're going to learn strategies that you're going to carry into your future classroom. And you're going to learn stuff that you're not going to do in your classroom and strategies you're not going to implement into your own classroom. So it's all a learning experience. So I'm going to pause here. Does anyone have like any specific questions related to like dealing with maybe misunderstandings or ways to phrase things to cooperating teachers that you might need some help with? Because sometimes it's all in a matter of how do you phrase this. So I'll give an example from one of my student teachers had the worksheet problem. So she was like, Dr. Fessage, I really want to try a breakout EDU, but my co-op loves her worksheets. And I was like, okay, well, let's go at it with let's talk about, can you walk me through why a breakout EDU would be great for this topic? And she walked me through, it was about the planets, and she had students solving different puzzles and questions about the planets. And it was a really fun interactive activity. They were scanning QR codes all around the classroom. It was really great. And I said, this sounds awesome. Let's go at it and share with your co-op. You know what? I really want to try this strategy I learned about in my Methods 2 class. It's called Breakout EDU. It's where students solve puzzles to get to a solution. And here's some things I planned out for our chapter about planets. Maybe that's in 2 or 3 weeks. I would love for you to check it out, and I want to try it. And I'd love to hear your feedback on it. So share the benefits for the students, share a little bit about the techniques that you have already planned out and why you want to try something. Not just, I want to do a breakout EDU, share like how you develop that idea, why it would support student learning, how you can collect assessment data. Because for some teachers, like, well, how do I know students learned what I think they learned? That's why I have the worksheet. Well, thinking about, okay, well, how are you going to assess students? How do you know they understood your objective? So really planning that out thoughtfully, having a conversation, and also like bringing them into the loop. Like, I would love to hear your feedback on this technique and strategy. So I hope that that helps. If you have, if you're in a classroom that is a little worksheet heavy. All right, classroom management strategies. Oh, one more thing I want to say. I'm sorry. with maybe classrooms that are a little worksheet heavy. If you try these strategies and techniques, these are really neat things to put into your resume instead of just, I develop lesson plans aligned to standards, measurable objectives and assessments. You can put, I tried a breakout EDU, or I implemented a breakout EDU into my classroom and assess students' knowledge on the planets. So that's a really fun way to kind of add a little bit of sprinkles to your description in your student teaching experience. Okay, now I'm ready to go on. Thank you for your patience on that one. All right, classroom management strategies. So this is really important when you're going into your observation those first few days, really being intentional about your observation in your notes. So in the student teacher planner, which Raven and I posted in the chat, maybe it'll come back, you're gonna see the prompts for policies and procedures. How do students enter and exit the classroom? What are the ways they get their resources and materials? If they need to get scissors, glue, tape, whatever, staplers, whatever it might be. How do they leave the classroom? Like when they have to go to the restroom or go down to the nurse, like what's that policy? Is there a sign out sheet? Is there a code that they scan? I don't know, depending on the grade level. Maybe there is a QR code that goes to a Google form. So being really intentional about the classroom policies and procedures, so you can pick them up right away when you're doing your lessons and you're designing your content. Because if your placement's 8 weeks or 16 weeks, eventually your co-op is going to be teaching that content again, or teaching that section or that period again, and they need to be able to pick that up again with their policies and procedures. Now, some ways that you can help support classroom management strategies is if your co-op has multiple strategies. Maybe they have a clip up, clip down. I don't recommend that. Maybe they do. Maybe they have class dojo. Maybe they have tallies, whatever it might be. Maybe they're doing something with transition time. Ask them for your first lesson which classroom management strategy they would like you to focus on for this specific lesson. Maybe it's a call and response. Maybe it's getting student attention. So you can focus in on one and then add to it as you go. I've had student teachers who've had great conversations with their co-ops and they asked, hey, you know what? I'm doing this unit with my students. I would really like to try this strategy, classroom management strategy with them to see how it goes. And I would like to manage that just so I get experience with that before I get into my own classroom. So outlining the management strategy you want to do, why it would help support students, why it would help with this topic. Again, coming in with a plan instead of just saying, I want to put the students in groups um, and rearrange the classroom. How do you think about that? So really come up with a clear plan and strategy as to how it's going to support students and what your step-by-step is for your classroom management. So be consistent, be clear. When you have to redirect students, be confident in that. So that's why knowing their names is really important, knowing their interests, knowing their dislikes, being confident in I need to correct this behavior now so it doesn't become a problem later. And you're not being mean, you're redirecting and you're correcting as you go. So it doesn't become a problem in your third, fourth week of teaching and this behavior is continuing. Like if students aren't raising their hand or whatever it might be. Have a specific plan to go and reflect on the classroom management strategy. So again, thinking about, okay, I'm going to be focusing on transition from reading time to the carpet. So maybe there's different places in the classroom you're going to work on transition time and reflect on that for classroom management because classroom management is a huge topic. So be nitpicky about which areas you want to reflect on. Being clear with your students, setting those expectations for learning. One of my student teachers, she was in a first grade class and they always had a song for moving from their desks to the front of the room. And it talked about eyes ready, ears listening, hands to myself, crisscross applesauce. So I'm not going to sing it, something along those lines, but it set the transition and they had until the end of the song and they knew their expectation as they're getting into that new space in the classroom. And then ask and reflect with your co-op about classroom management, especially if that's an area that you struggle with. And friends, remember, classroom management will come with practice and persistence and confidence and consistency. So just showing up and being clear with those expectations from day one, redirecting as you need to, and being confident in that. Before we move on to our next piece, what questions do we have about classroom management? Remember, some key takeaways is we are going to continue what our co-op's doing. If we want to try something, we're going to come up with a plan and share it with our co-op. So one of my, like I think I started to say earlier, one of my student teachers, she was doing a unit and she wanted to try a classroom management strategy of teams. So she had her, I think it was fourth grade, her students in groups of 5. And for each, they could earn different tally marks for positive behavior, like students participating, raising their hand, quick and quiet transitions, like as they're getting their books out and stuff put away, things like that. And so as she noticed those things for each team, she would put tally marks. And at the end of the period, or if it was a double period, the team who had the most tally marks got to put this octopus. It was one of those octopuses that like have different feelings if you switch it out, like one of it's happy and one of it's angry, I think. But they got to put it in their group in the middle of their team desk. And that was a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. They got the octopus and they got to name it for the period. And then at the end of the period, the octopus would be up for grabs for another team. So that was really fun. All right, let me go ahead and look at some of our questions. I like how Marissa shared, I like how we learned how to introduce ourselves to our mentor teacher. Yeah, that was a really fun one. And best practices for being prepared. Starsheen shares, one takeaway from last week is the importance of reflections each day. Yeah, that's so important. All right. So Vera shares, how do we work towards managing classrooms where we are serving as substitute teachers? So hopefully when you're serving as a substitute teacher and your student teaching, you're subbing in the classroom in which your student teaching in. I hope that that's happening so you can keep that consistency of substitute teaching and classroom management. If not, then that's a totally different conversation. I have a resource, Severa. I'll drop my email here and I'll send it to you. It's about having like a bag of tricks whenever you're a substitute, and having like some quick wins with classroom management. So thinking about the grades that you're working with and some different techniques to help you out. Yeah, of course. I really do hope though, whenever you are subbing, um, it's in the classroom that you are student teaching in. What do you do if you are in a lesson, the kids are getting rowdy, too excited, it's hard to settle them down? Honestly, Nina, I would try like a mindfulness moment, having them just take a breath, maybe get up, stand up, get the wiggles out, and then coming back to the lesson. It's okay to take a pause in your lesson. You don't have to keep going, especially if you need to redirect them um, for that lesson. So I would just say it's okay to take a pause. It's okay to take a beat, collect your thoughts, redirect. Depending on the age of your students, you can also say, I really like how so and so's ready to go. I really like how our two friends here are collaborating, whatever it might be. To kind of, refocus their attention or remind them of expectations during your lesson. I hope that that was helpful, Nina. What thing is, Star Sheen shares, what do you recommend about classroom management routines and developing expectations if we're starting student teaching midway through the year? Yeah, so that's going to go back to your cooperating teacher. Again, observe what their routines and expectations are so you can pick that up. Also have those conversations with your co-op and ask them, oh, hey, I noticed that you do a transition song. Can you share with me how that's helped your students? I noticed that when students are getting ready to go from reading to math and they're switching their books out, you're counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Why did you choose that? Why, how has that helped your students? Again, like focusing it back to the students and just being curious about their classroom management techniques. You can even ask, what are some other strategies you've tried and maybe they didn't work, or what are some strategies you would like to try? If this, you can continue that conversation. What have you tried? What would you like to try? Do you think that's something I could do? What are some classroom management techniques that you feel I need to have as a new teacher, just so you're reflecting and having that conversation? I think classroom management is one of the toughest things to do as a student teacher and as a new teacher. But as you get more exposure to different techniques and strategies, you can keep adding them or taking them out of your teacher tool bag, because there's going to be stuff that you're going to be like, oh, I like this one, and ones you're like, I don't think I'm going to use that, like the clip up, clip down. Okay, let's keep rolling. I'll keep an eye on that chat. Yes, absolutely. Love the open line of communication. I think that's so important. I can't understate that enough or overstate that enough. You got to keep that line of communication open with your co-op and with your supervisor. All right, so let's talk about supervisor observations. I'm going to minimize our chat, but I'll come back to it. So as a student teacher supervisor myself, I do look for a few things whenever I go in. So one thing I like to see is at the student teacher desk, the lesson is flipped to what I'm going to observe. So I can clearly see standards, objectives, procedures, assessment, and I'm looking for alignment across all those things. Are the standards aligned to the objectives? Are the objectives measurable? It's something that the student or the teacher can see. And what's the criterion of that objective? Is that 80%, 90%, 75%? And then looking to see the procedures that you're using and if they align with what you're assessing. So are you actually assessing what you taught? And is what you taught aligned to those objectives, and are those objectives aligned to standards? So looking through alignment there. I'm also looking for an anticipatory set and a closure. Those are other two big things I look for. So not, all right, let's turn to page 56 and work on problems 1 through 5. That's not an anticipatory set. Looking for a way you're going to hook the student into learning. And a great recommendation is Teach Like a Pirate. I know it was like written in, I think it was 2017, but there's a whole bunch of different hooks to get students interested. So Teach Like a Pirate by Dave Burgess is a fantastic book to think of those anticipatory sets and those hooks to get students interested. And then whenever you do your conclusion, if you can link it back to that anticipatory set, awesome. If not, that's okay. You want to make sure in your conclusion at the end of your lesson that you restate what we've learned today. So it's like, oh yeah, I did learn about that today. So you're kind of closing that envelope of learning. I like to share, I like to kind of remind students that it's not just an exit ticket. It's a quick one sentence review. Here's what we did in our class today. And then you can do the exit activity or exit ticket or whatever it might be. They're ticking out the door, so to speak, just so you close that envelope on learning. Another thing you're going to want to know, and these are things you can ask your college supervisor, is how many times will you be in to observe me? When can I expect feedback on my lesson that you've observed? For me, I love to try to do a feedback session right after the student has taught. It's fresh in our minds. If it doesn't work out because of schedules, and sometimes it doesn't, phone call or Zoom meeting is the other way to go. So asking, will the feedback be virtual? Will it be in person? When can I expect that feedback or conference with you? Will you know when they're coming, or is it a surprise? So knowing the difference there, maybe some are pre-scheduled, some are a surprise. So being aware of that. In lessons, I also will look for, I'll flip through their planner or I'll go to where they've turned in their lessons and I'll look for reflection. I look for reflection questions that aren't the same every single lesson, because maybe there are certain things you want to focus in on lessons. So let's say you've taught morning meeting for a whole week, and now you want to try focusing in on a specific part of morning meeting, maybe the brain break or something. And your job this time for morning meeting is to kind of take over a resource for the brain break. So, reflecting on how did that resource go? Should I shorten it next time? Thinking about and being strategic about your reflection and not having the same questions each time. What did I do well? What could I do better? Because each lesson is a little bit different. And I hope that you're focusing in on different things each time as you reflect. When I'm meeting with students, here's just a list of a few questions that I like to ask. And I don't ask these every time. I do like to mix it up a little bit. But I do ask, did your students meet your objective? And sometimes students will like, wait, what was my objective? Like, well, you tell me, what was your objective and did your students meet it? So it's important to know, what are you teaching and did your students meet that objective? That's why in the planner, there's these one sheets that's called lesson at a glance. So after you develop your full lesson plan, for some of you, that's going to be 4 pages. For some of you, it's going to be maybe more than that. But there's a one pager where you just jot down, here's my objective, here's how it's being measured, here's my procedure, here's any accommodations and my assessment. So you can have a quick sheet that you just look for. Okay, these are the main focuses for my lesson. And then it also helps you when you're teaching, if you need to look at your plan while you're doing it, you don't get lost in your lesson plan. Another question I like to ask is, okay, so you've been teaching, let's say, Heggerty for all of week 2. What are some things that you want to focus on when you teach this again for week 3? Maybe you want to get better with your pacing. Maybe you want to get better with the hand motions and practicing that. So when you teach this lesson again, what are some things you want to improve upon? When you think about the students that you taught today, can you identify any students that might have been struggling? How are you going to go back and support them the next day? That can also lead to, if the whole class or most of the class was struggling with the lesson, how are we going to go back and reteach that? Because it looked like maybe a few of them had it, but most of them were kind of confused. So I think we need to go back and reteach that lesson, which is totally fine. What are some strategies you're going to try to do to help make that more concrete for students? How are you going to assess your students? What data did you collect? How are you going to assess that they got that objective? And then how do you know if students were engaged? Not compliant, engaged in your lesson. There's a difference there. So for engagement, are they doing a think, pair, share? Are they jotting something down? Or are they just sitting there waiting for that one student to raise their hand? Like, okay, that's the answer. Are they engaged in looking through their text for answers? So thinking about, what does engagement look like for this lesson? And how do I know my students are doing that? So just a few questions there to be thinking about whenever you meet with your supervisor. These could be a few, there could be totally different questions as well. These are just a few things that I'd like to refer to. I'd love to open up to any questions here when it comes to supervisor observations. I'm just going to mute my mic and take a sip of water, and then we'll move on. All right, so I'll keep that chat open for a little bit more, and then I'll keep rolling here. Okay. All right. So let's talk about balancing personal and professional life. And before I get into some of the resources here, you have got to check out the Rooted Teacher. It's over on the KDP website. There's a banner for it and everything. It's a beautiful podcast that talks about this quality of life initiative that helps supports you in this area. So I very much recommend listening to the podcast. It's a wonderful resource for you to continue in this area of professional, personal life and balancing that out. Thank you. I was just going to ask, and someone put a link in there. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Christopher. Yep. So add that to wherever you listen to podcasts and make it a habit. It has mindfulness and yeah, fantastic resource. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about how we can manage our personal and professional life. So with everything, everything in moderation, right? So setting those boundaries for ourselves, whether that is for me, I do not put my work email on my phone. So that's one of my boundaries. Another boundary that I have is I don't check email after 5 o'clock. I'm at the age where if they send me an email after 5, they'll get a response at 6 a.m. That's what I'm up again. And I like to have family time. So that's one of the ways I like to set those boundaries. Maybe for you, it looks a little bit different. So whenever you come, whenever you're done teaching, let's say you teach 7:30, your day is 7:30 to 3:30, travel, let's go to 4:30 on that. Maybe you want to grab a snack and relax a little bit, whether that is scrolling or watching something on the TV or on your phone, and then having time to do some assessment or having some time to plan out your lesson or reflection. So just making sure that you are keeping track of setting those boundaries around your time and protecting your time for yourself, having time for family if you're in that stage of life, having time for friends, having time to, if you enjoy going to the gym or working out or whatever that, taking a walk, whatever that might be. So making sure you have time for that and put it on your calendar. For me, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. So one of the my favorite podcasters is Amy Porterfield, and she calls this purple time. Her purple time is her time. So she can do whatever she wants to do during that purple time, whether it's taking a walk or listening to a podcast or whatever it might be, but scheduling that in. I have a sign in my living room that says, wherever you are, be all there. Meaning wherever you are in like whenever you're in the classroom, be there 100%. Whenever you're with your family, be there 100% and show up so you can show up for yourself and for those who need you in that space. Make sure that you prioritize your self-care by eating healthy meals, sleeping those 7 to 8 hours. There's no such thing as there's no such thing that's going to measure up to like teacher tired. Because when we are tired, we are tired. We've answered questions. We've been talking all day. We've been working with people. It can be very tiring. So please make sure that you're taking time for yourself to practice those healthy habits. Another one would be to stay organized. Again, keeping that calendar. And that's why in the planner, most of those pages at the end are geared for calendar pages. There's monthly view, weekly view, daily view. So you can go ahead, you can jot down your goals and any notes or stuff on your to-do list. Or maybe you have a to-don't list. These are my non-negotiables. These are things I'm not going to do. Maybe you're setting up a timer for social media on your phone, so you don't do more than an hour, whatever that is. Make sure we're reflecting often, just like we talked about in our workshop 1, and keeping a positive outlook, going in with an open mind. That can be with your cooperating teacher, going into your classroom with your students, having that supervisor observation, knowing that, you know what, they are here to help me. They're here to support me. And I'm going to show up for me and show up for my students. So keeping that positive mindset going. Another thing, when we're in our student teaching placements and we're in our classrooms, like I said before, be 100% there. Don't be planning out something that's like maybe you're in a Greek group. Don't be planning the Greek group activity while you're to be planning your lessons. So be 100% in that space with your students and with your co-op because they notice. All right, let's keep. Sorry, I forgot to ask. Any questions, comments, concerns about balancing that professional, personal life? And I do have a resource on my website. Maybe I'll get to it whenever I switch my screen. It was written by a KDP member. Her name is Stephanie, and she shares about, I think it's something like having a life outside of student teaching. So I'll make sure I pop that in our chat today. She's from the Delta Road chapter in New Jersey. All right, so it looks like there's no questions on that one. I hope for those of you who are looking forward to that part of the session, you got some good techniques and strategies. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's not very popular, but yeah, I don't do work email on my phone. It's just, yeah, it's just one of those things, and it's okay. Um, if you need permission, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to have your work email on your phone. But do check it. I do sit on your computer or whatever, find a specific time. All right, so let's talk about some ed tech because that was a few of the things people were looking for in our chat earlier. So first things first, understand what your school has access to, whether that is an interactive whiteboard, it could be a smart board, a Mimeo, a Promethean board. Know how to work the hardware piece, like how to turn it on, how do I connect my computer, whatever that part is. How do I turn on the speakers? And if the speakers aren't working, how do I turn on the projector? And then also understand the software aspect of that specific interactive whiteboards, whether they use Lumio or I'm trying to think of another one for the Promethean Planet, I think it is. So get familiar with the software that they use for that interactive whiteboard. I would very much suggest Lumio because it is cross-platform. It doesn't matter if you're using a Mimeo, a Promethean, or a Smartboard. Lumio will work across all of those, so I suggest that one. I'm not going to show that one tonight, but it's a really great tool to get into because it really does use the interactive whiteboard as an interactive whiteboard. Students can touch on it and it'll it'll have different buttons. There's different games students can play. So it's fantastic. It's Lumio. It's actually by Smart Tech, the developers of a smartboard, but it can work across different platforms. So that's one recommendation. If you're able to get certified in different applications that your school is using. So for example, Nearpod has Nearpod Pioneer. You get certified in that. CuriPod has, and Paradeck has different certifications that you can develop materials and be a certified educator in that content area or in that specific application. Try to do that. That looks really good on a resume, and you are flexing your tech muscles there, which is really cool. And maybe you're going to teach your co-op something new with that. So can you get certified in a specific ed tech tool, or maybe get certified in Google Level 1 or Microsoft Educator? And then there's also Apple, I think it's Apple Certified Educator. Need to look up the specific terminology for that, but you can get certified across all these different platforms. So I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite ed tech tools. Let me go ahead and escape out of the screen. Whoops. There we go. And I'm just going to scoot my Zoom down. All right. So the first one, and I'm going to pop it into our chat too, so you can play along if you would like, is Classroom Screen. Give me a Y in chat if you have used Classroom Screen. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and grab the link for Lumio so we can have access to that. But we're not going to demo that one today. And then I'm also going to pull up the link to that student teacher blog post about having a life outside of student teaching. So give me a Y in chat if you have used Classroom Screen before. Okay, so it looks like it's new. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, I'm gonna come back to this one because it's not coming up on the first page, which is fine. It's in there. It's in there. I'll find it. All right, so Classroom Screen, this is where we're gonna hang out with. So in Classroom Screen, it's a really nice tool for classroom management. And the first thing that you do is we can go to when you create a free account, remember we specialize in free. All the tools I'll show you are free or using like a freemium account. I have not bought anything. You're gonna click on create a new screen. And we'll click this one. I don't think I have anything on this one. From left to right, we're gonna check out the different little features here. We can change up the background. We can even have a live webcam if you would like. Now, here in Pennsylvania, it is, I think it was like -11 today. So this is very appropriate for our background today. You can have polls up. This one I've had student teachers use as students are leaving. They touch on the smiley face about how they're feeling about the lesson or how confident they're feeling about that topic. You can have multiple choice, smiley face, true and false. You can have a sound level if you wanted to measure the sound in the room. So this one, I know someone asked in the chat, like, what do I do if a class is rowdy? You can have the sound level up, and if it gets past a certain point, we need to take a break, guys, or you know, we need to come back together and refocus. Randomizer randomly calls on students, so you can put in all the student names, and it'll randomly select the student's name. You can put in images and text. I like using this one like as a welcome message. So as you come in, open up your learning journal and reflect on our last lesson together, or you can put in the schedule here. I once had a student teacher who had a student in their class that would always ask, when's lunch? Is it lunch yet? What time's lunch? So she would use the timetable where she can put in the different schedule, and she can check off as they go what activities they're doing until lunchtime. So that was really helpful. I skipped one here. Work symbols. This one's really nice if you have students switching classes and maybe you have a few students finishing up work. You can have this class symbol up. So as students are coming in, you still have a few students taking a test, you can have this up. Or if they're doing a think, pair, share, maybe they're doing large group sharing here and collaborating. So there's a lot of different things they can do with our work symbols. And you can have multiple things up at a time. I've just been showing one at a time. So we can have our little welcome message. Welcome, glad you're here. Traffic light's really fun. You can pair this with the sound level if you wanted to. So red light, we're listening in on our instructions. Yellow light, what questions do we have? Green light, all right, let's go, we're working. Timer is really popular. You can have different time at the end, like sound effects, like Mario Kart or tropical music, birds tweeting, cows mooing, whatever you would like it to be, just adding a little bit of fun. Excuse me. And then we have under more, there's a lot here. So maybe you have an event countdown on your classroom screen where it's counting down to an assembly or the 100th day of school. Stickers and scoreboards, visual timer for our students who need that visual aspect there. There's a lot you can do here in Classroom Screen. And again, it's free. It's a fantastic tool to use. They also have templates that you can check out in Classroom Screen. And this one's a little bit newer. They have classroom management classroom management templates. There we go. We have choose your lunch, positive reward jar, question of the day, some brain breaks, and you would just click on these and you can use them in your classroom. Building an alien, that sounds like fun. Students versus teachers, memory match. Yeah, so there's a lot here that you can use. for some classroom management, and you'll see like it has some different categories here. So that's classroom screen. Really fun tool. Love this for when students come in. It gives them something visually to look at and visually to connect with. Our next one that we're going to look at is Brisk. This is an AI tool. Just give me a second to go ahead and put that in our chat. Brisk is a extension you can add onto Chrome. I have it up here as that little B with a black circle around it. And whenever you're on any site that Brisk can work, it'll pop up. So I'm going to have it up here. I went to National Geographic Kids, and you'll see Brisk is up here. All right, it's up in the lower left-hand or right-hand corner. I can click on it, and it's going to say, all right, what do you want to do with this website? If you click create, you can create guided notes for this specific website. You can create a presentation. You can create a resource. You can create a lesson plan. Let me scroll down a little bit. Subplan, UDL lesson plan, all sorts of stuff here, just based on that one website. So if I go to, I don't want to create a syllabus. I clicked on the wrong one, sorry. Create presentation. It's not going to be for university. I'll go for second grade. 10 slides, English. Yep, this looks good. I'm going to click next. And it'll let me choose a template. Anything with a star is free. I'm going to go with the chalkboard and click Brisket. And what it's going to do, it's going to grab that website and it's going to open up my Google Drive and create a presentation on that website about the emperor penguin. We'll give it some think time. AI needs think time too. And what I love about these presentations is it's not just the content, but it also gives some questions. So let me see if I can find one. There we go. So here's our fun fact questions. Did you know the emperor penguin can stand in icy winds? What do you think makes them so strong? And then you can create resources based on that. So maybe I'm going to create a resource, Brisket. I think it's going to open up, yeah, it's going to open up Google Docs, and it's going to create a resource based on that presentation, which is based on that website. So what I like about this is narrowing down what content I'm pulling from. I'm not going all over the internet. I'm just focusing on one resource, which I know is vetted. It's National Geographic Kids. And now it's creating presentations, and now it's creating a resource for me. And then I can continue with that as it goes. We can do guided notes. We can do a boost activity. So there's a lot of really fun stuff that we can do with Brisk. And it looks like it's giving us a nice little summary here. Maybe you want to use this as guided notes or have this up to refer to. So that is Brisk. We're going to keep that Emperor Penguin site up because we're also going to use it in Diffit. Give me a Y in chat if you have used Diffit before. Okay, so it's new to everybody. Okay, so what Diffit does, I'm just going to grab that link again, is you can type in, what do you want to create a student resource for? You can type in anything in here. You can pull an article link or YouTube link. That's what I'm going to do. You can throw in a text or PDF. And I've had student teachers throw in like it's like in social studies, it's called like a first account, like, oh, primary source. That's what it is. A primary source. And then she had it adapt for different reading levels and different activities. But she was like, you know what, Dr. Fessage, I loved putting the primary source in there. So then I was able to adapt the reading level. So I knew more about it and I was able to understand it better. So it helped her as a teaching tool. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link in there. And then I'm going to change the reading level to second. And you can also translate it here. I'm going to click generate resources. What it's going to do, it's going to pull just from this Emperor Penguin site from National Geographic Kids. And this is the content it's pulling from. And see, when I log into Diffit, and if I don't use it within like 10 minutes of logging in, it logs me out. I'm sorry. Let me click sign in and then we'll see what it does. There we are. Creates me a little adapted reading passage. a summary, vocab from the website, multiple choice questions with answers, because I might need that. Short answer and open-ended prompt. What I like about looking at some of these short answer and open-ended prompts is, ooh, these could be some good ideas for anticipatory tests or an exit ticket. But you can also do student activities. When I click get student activities, I can do a reading summary. I can do a vocab drag and drop. There's graphic organizers, and it'll create a reading activity for me in my Google Drive just based on that based on that website and the adapted resources. So Brisk and Diffit are two power players when it comes to using some ed tech, and it really will help to save you some teacher time. I'm going to go back to the presentation or the Google Doc that Brisk was working from. You can see it's still putting it out there. And I just think that's really cool. I'm just going to click stop generating. Thank you, Brisk, and close that out. All right, so we talked about Diffit, we talked about Brisk, and we looked at Classroom Screen. I'm going to go ahead and look into our chat really quick, make sure we're good to go there. We're just ending out our session today. It is really cool, Michelle. It's super cool. I wish I had it whenever I was student teaching, because it really does save some teacher time. Both of those tools together are wonderful. So I recommend, checking them out and using them a little bit to help support you in your planning and in your lesson design, engaging student activities. All right, so before we end our tech part of our lesson, or our workshop, I'd love for you to drop in the chat what's one of the tools you want to check out today or continue to check out as you're student teaching. Maybe look at Classroom Screen more, or maybe Brisk where you're like, oh my gosh, I need that. Or maybe Diffit knocked your teacher socks off. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, please share it with fellow student teachers and tell them to come to our workshop next week. Yeah, Diffit's really cool. Brisk is awesome. I like that, all the above. That's what I would choose as well. All right. Lumio and Diffit, Classroom Screen. Awesome. Yeah, go ahead and check them out. I think they're fantastic opportunities. All right, so we also wanted to bring your attention to our next workshop that's coming up. It's focusing on landing your dream job. This is not part of our student teacher series for workshop 3, which will be next week, but this is February 5th from 5:30 to 7. It's a 90-minute workshop that's going to talk you through from resume to interview questions and everything in between. So it looks like a few people signed up, which is awesome. Fantastic, Marissa. I can't wait. And Sarshina, I'm excited to see you there. I also wanted to bring up for our workshop next week, there is a time change to 5:30. I did have some scheduling conflicts. So we do have that next week. Workshop 3 is at 5:30. So please, make that change on your schedule. As I pull up our poll for let me go back, our post event. Whoops, post event. Where are we? There we are. I'd love for you guys to fill that out. And if we get 70% or more, I will share out another student teacher resource with you. So we have our 5 questions. It's the same ones from our pre. How are we feeling about our topics that we talked about? We looked at challenging or difficult conversations with co-ops. We looked at classroom management, technology, ed tech, supervisor observations, and balancing personal and professional expectations. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Eastern, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you so much. So we do have a time change for next week, and then February 5th will be our land your student teacher job. We have 68%. All right, 72%. I'll go ahead and share one more resource with you all. I'd love to open up to questions, comments, concerns. If you have any, I would love to hear them. So here's one more resource. It's going to take you to a student teacher playlist from my podcast. And it goes through all sorts of resources there. And while we're here, I'm just going to go ahead and look up that one, having a life outside of student teaching. And I'll go ahead and post that in our chat too. Oh, that's okay, Marvin. It will be recorded, so you'll have access to it. Okay, so Kayla, yeah, so that QR code would have gone to the student teacher planner. Let me go ahead and scroll up and pop that link in here so you have it and you can just grab it from there. So if you
So
missed, oh, sorry.
I wanted to say, so Kayla saying that she didn't get the link. So if you guys did not get an email from me today, my email is michelle@kdp.org. You might check your spam because it might have gotten filtered out, but I did send everyone who was registered for the student teacher boot camp an email that included the link to the student teacher planner as well as several other links to useful resources around classroom management, a couple of teaching channel videos, a couple of teacher advocate articles. So some resources I think you all will find useful. So if you didn't get it, check your spam, and if you don't find it, let me know and I will resend it to you. We'll try it again. But
Thank
yeah,
you,
so go
Michelle.
ahead and pop that in the chat, the link to the planner. That'll be great. Oh, you did it again
I
already.
popped that in there. Kristen's asking, will the February 5th Landry teaching job be recorded? And yes, yes, it will be. Thank you, Ganelle. Thank you, Krista. Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate you guys being here. It is 6 o'clock my time. Have a lovely Wednesday evening, and we'll see you guys next week. Time change at 5:30 for our last workshop in our series. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye for now.